The SpaceX Starship's launch was a success. Well, partially. Albeit it did manage to complete most of its objectives, especially the most essential ones, the Starship still disintegrated while returning to Earth. Let's see what went wrong with it, as well as how does this third launch impact the future of space exploration as we look at what happened on the SpaceX's third Starship launch. But first, let's check out what the Starship's third launch set out to achieve. You see, the Starship's third launch is by far the most ambitious project concerning the ship, as SpaceX planned for it to test out numerous capabilities of the ship at once. The launch was set to occur on the 14th of March near Boca Chica. The first and by far the most important test was the orbital insertion, seeing how the previous launches failed at reaching orbit. This was incredibly important for SpaceX because orbital insertions are the most problematic part of space exploration and launches. This is because of the immense change in pressure that happens once the ship reaches orbital speeds, which could easily lead to the ship being rendered inoperable due to pressure damage. Not to mention that maintaining these speeds is extremely hard and consuming, which is why SpaceX invested heavily to achieve an orbital insertion. The next part of the test was seeing how the ship performed while in orbit. This included testing out the autonomous system of the ship, as well as checking if there were any irregularities that could potentially hamper the ship's capabilities. This is an important step because it simulates traveling through space in a controlled environment. The Starship was then to return to land, or more precisely sea. The re-entry process is very similar to entering orbit, with similar issues that could arise, which is why SpaceX was confident that they could return the Starship back home. So, with that in mind, let's check out how did the flight go. The first failing point, and the one that cost the first Starship its success, was the launch. This hasn't been an issue with the new Starship because all of the 33 engines used on the Super Heavy booster worked flawlessly. Furthermore, the separation process between the ship and the booster had no issues, as the booster separated from the ship as planned with no noted hardships. Furthermore, the Starship reached orbit without any serious issues, and although the strain on it due to pressures was immense, the ship withstood them very well, passing the test with flying colors. With it successfully getting a hold of the orbit, the Starship succeeded at putting SpaceX's biggest concern at rest and deeming the key milestone of the flight complete. And not just that, but when the Starship entered orbit, it managed to successfully keep flying for quite some time without any errors or issues ever arising. In total, the ship managed to successfully fly for a whopping 64 minutes in total. Ultimately, the Starship reached heights of 230 kilometers, which is truly unbelievable. However, once it was time for the ship to return home, all hell broke loose. So let's check out what went wrong. Despite the flight showing no problems until now, re-entering the Earth's atmosphere seems to have been too much for the ship to withstand. As we've already mentioned, this is a very problematic process, and up until now, SpaceX had virtually no idea what could happen to the ship once it tried to re-enter. Because of this, once SpaceX instructed the Starship to start up its engines and begin its descent to Earth, the ship started malfunctioning. After a failed attempt of re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, the ship's engines failed to reignite, which led to the vessel having no way of propelling itself and navigating properly. As a result, the Starship started falling down towards Earth and, in the process, reaching enormous temperatures which rendered it virtually inoperable soon after it lost its engines. As a result, the telemetry on the ship turned off, and after a few moments, the ship was pronounced destroyed, most likely disintegrating on the way down, or possibly even self-destructing. The remains of the ship have not been recovered, and SpaceX officials announced that they won't be searching for them. Furthermore, despite separating successfully, the Super Heavy booster also didn't survive the flight. You see, even though they separated without any issues, and even though the booster flipped around and began its descent back to the Gulf of Mexico, it eventually started struggling to retain its orientation. This led to the cameras falling down and the booster not knowing its proximity to the surface, which prohibited it from turning on its engine to land, instead having a hard splashdown. As a result, the booster was rendered inoperable and it has not been recovered, just like the ship itself. However, despite both the Starship and the booster not surviving the third flight, SpaceX rendered it a success, with Elon Musk being highly content with the results achieved with it. But how is this a success? Well, you see, both the Starship and the booster succeeded at completing every milestone that SpaceX set out to do. Well, apart from surviving the flight, that is. First of all, the orbital insertion was a major question mark, and with it being done successfully, the Starship is now officially space ready. Not to mention that SpaceX is now confident that the separation process is, from now on, completely reliable, and they expect that there will be no issues arising in the future. Even more interesting is the fact that the booster also showed us that it could successfully navigate back to Earth once it separated from the Starship. Its destruction was just a result of chance, seeing as it being disoriented happened because of the low deck clouds. If the sky were clear, the booster would have no issues returning to Earth. Elon Musk also set out for the Starship to achieve orbital velocities. This includes speeds of up to 28,000 kilometers per hour, a challenge that has officially been completed with the third flight. If that wasn't enough, the fact that the communication with the ship remained flawless even after orbital insertion confirmed that the ship is now capable of navigating through space. As a result of these victories, both small and grand, SpaceX, NASA, and countless others consider this flight an absolute win. But we have to ask ourselves, what does this mean for the future of space exploration? Well, with the third flight being complete, we can now say, unofficially, of course, that the beginning phase of Starship's practical development and testing has finally ended. Elon Musk went out and confirmed that because of the ship's reliability that has been achieved with the third launch, SpaceX will now start testing it out much more frequently with flights that are expected to occur almost monthly. He stated that SpaceX plans on sending 6 more Starships into orbit by the end of 2024, which is incredible. Now, with the increased number of launches and with tests that are expected to be much broader, we can expect the development to become even faster and much more fruitful. As a result, we can now finally rest easy knowing that the ship will, most likely, be actually capable of taking on the moon with the Artemis program, and any other further delays for the said program, at least from SpaceX's side, are highly unlikely to happen. Finally, this also brings hope to those of us that are eagerly awaiting Elon's planned exploration and eventual colonization of Mars. All in all, we are extremely thrilled to see how a singular launch just swung space exploration in the right direction after years of mistakes. It would seem that Elon Musk managed to finally outdo himself. Good job, Elon. Good job.